You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, and co-host Keelan Harvey on Alternative Talk AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage experts Tina Mitchell and Keelan Harvey.
Welcome back to the Money Hour on 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, May 18th show. I am your host, Tina Mitchell.
And I am your co-host, Keelan Harvey.
Your local mortgage experts bringing in expert advice and inside knowledge on today's events and how they can affect your money. If you're hearing our show at a different time or day, you are listening to a rebroadcast, but we're here to answer any questions or connect you with the guests that we have on the show. Please call the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. In studio right now, we have Lara Currie of Difficult Happens, Business, Bullies, and Boundaries. Lara, you've been in studio a few times and just really appreciate you here and the information that you provide. Thank you so much for coming back.
Absolutely. You know I love talking about difficult stuff.
Yes, you do, and you are good at it. And a little bit about Lara is she's a trainer, speaker, podcaster, and the author of Difficult Happens, How Triggers, Boundaries, and Emotional Impact You Every Day. With 27 plus years of experience in high conflict positions, she has a unique and intuitive understanding of why people act and react the way they do. She is passionate about helping people communicate in an increasingly reactionary world, make honest and meaningful connections, live with less stress, and establish strong boundaries.
So, Laura, you help train people in high-stress fields to understand why people act and react the way that they do in order to strengthen essential communication skills needed. Why is this more important now than ever?
You know, especially in the high conflict fields, everybody's so tense. Everybody's stressed out. You know, we just heard from Mike about the housing crisis and a lot of the bills that may or may not be passed. And people are just more tense right now. And as the elections kind of start to ramp up, and as we get more and more conflict, especially you think of the high-risk fields like realtors or mortgages or finance, or they're already stressed from the inside and they're getting stressed from the outside. And when your clientele comes to you stressed out, well, you're going to match that stress, right?
Mm-hmm.
You start communicating ineffectively or you start to miscommunicate with each other. It leads to a disconnect, which leads to conflict.
Yeah. So let's talk about what the essential boundaries people who work in high-stress fields like mortgage, real estate, finances must have.
Yeah, it's funny because whenever I try and say, you know, the high stress fields, it's like, yeah, all of them.
I was going to say there's so many of them.
Right.
Everybody thinks theirs is the only one.
Yes. So the boundaries that we all have are, you know, your physical boundaries, your emotional boundaries, your intellectual boundaries, material boundaries, and time boundaries. But the most critical boundary that you need, frankly, I think as a human being, but as a leader in particular, are your internal boundaries. Mm-hmm. No, you know, don't say yes to something when you mean no. Know who you are and what you can do and what you're able to offer and what you can ask of other people. But check in on your own internal boundaries, because when you overstep those, it can lead to a lot of internal conflict, which will manifest in external conflict.
Yeah, and that's so good, Laura, because really embracing who you are, what you represent, what your core values are, you really need to set up your business around that, because there's enough clients out there for everybody, and we're really not all alike, and some people are going to have certain beliefs or the way that they do business. And I know in the real estate space, especially, because we work in that so much, obviously, in the mortgage industry, that with real estate agents, there are certain things that you can have an industry leader, two industry leaders in the industry, and they have a totally different look on strategies in whether listing or buying a home. And so you have to really decide what strategy and what direction that you're going to go. I'm just using this as one example. And then really, if the clients don't fall within that, then you've got to be willing to let them go, right?
Absolutely. I think that you have to have a mission, vision, and values for yourself and your company. And that way, if you are a little confused whether or not you should take this deal or take this client or break up with this client, run it by your mission, vision, and values. If that's your guiding light, that's your guiding principles. If it doesn't match up with it, it's an easy decision to make.
Yeah.
Now, I should say it's a simple decision to make. Simple doesn't mean easy.
Yes, nothing's
stuff
easy,
is-
but simple, yes.
Yeah.
Great correction there. Laura, I love how you talk about micro boundary breaches and just micro boundaries in general. Can you talk about micro boundary breach and why it is the most dangerous part of any breach or boundary?
Yeah. Because it's so easy to excuse or dismiss. Well, they talk to me that way. They're just having a bad day. Maybe, I'm not gonna address it. But when you let those little tiny things go, you're basically teaching people how they can treat you. So it's understandable with those in your inner circle, those that you love. You have a rhythm, and you do forgive them, and you can later bring it up to them if you like. But when it comes to your clientele, your staff, your coworkers, you need to make sure to address those micro boundary breaches immediately and respectfully. Just say, hey, you may be having a bad day, but please don't speak to me in that manner.
Yeah.
You need to make sure to address it right away. Or like when you did say yes to something when you really meant no, even if you've already done it, you can go back and say, I know I told you I was able to do this. I am no longer able to do that. You can apologize, but draw your boundaries firmly.
Yeah, so true.
So I think, and that can all add up too. So really the premise of that is catching it early, getting on top of it and setting up those boundaries before it blows up into something bigger. I mean, you're really just micro boundaries, all those little yeses that we say when really maybe inside we don't feel that way. That's huge. That's
Follow your
fantastic.
gut.
Follow your gut.
And by inches you go miles. Well, that
Yes.
works with boundary breaches too.
Of
By
course it
inches
does.
they can be eviscerated. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Such a dramatic
Laura,
break.
preparation up front obviously is the key to everything. So, when it comes to preparation and success, what can you do to prepare up front before working and meeting with clients?
Yeah, this is so important, especially in the high stress fields. I'll use the example of, like a property manager or a realtor. People, what you know, and sometimes your clientele doesn't know. And so you need to create safety for them, especially in these high stress situations. So pre-frame. Let them know what it's going to look like to work with you, what they can expect along the way, what you're going to expect from them, what your accessibility is, what the best way is to contact you. Just doing a little pre-framing, it really creates safety and it helps you draw those boundaries, right?
Yes.
You want to say, feel free to email me and I will get back to you within 24 to 48 hours, right? Right away, they may be thinking, I'll just text her when I have a question at 10:30 at night and I want to answer right away.
Well, it's like on a voicemail, it says, if you don't get me live, feel free for a quicker response, text me. And I'm like, why do people put that in their voicemail? Because what it's saying is I'm available all the time via text.
Right. And you're telling them how they can treat
and this
you.
is a generic voicemail that never gets changed,
Yeah.
And so, you're really thinking about the words that you're communicating because people hear it the way they want to hear it.
Exactly.
So Laura, you say that everybody has a conflict personality type. What are the different conflict personality types?
We sure do. These come up when you get defensive or reactionary, and they are the perfectionist, the pleaser, the avoider, and the victim. Whenever I outline these, right away people go, I know who I am and I know who I don't like.
So, you have the love languages, personality types, and all of that. So why not have these as well? So how does your own conflict personality style help create a difficult client?
Yeah, so I am of the pleaser variety. Shocker. But my opposite is the victim conflict personality type. When we come
Opposite me, that's the hardest one for you to
Exactly.
connect with. Yeah.
Yeah, what happens is we get into a dance with each other. I'm trying to fix everything. They're trying to explain their victimology, and victims are also blamers, and pleasers are also fixers. They kind of go together. So we can get into this dance where we're stuck in a conflict loop of me overstepping their boundaries by trying to jump in and fix something that's not mine to fix.
Yeah.
Robbing them from natural consequences.
Yep.
And the victim oversteps my boundaries because they're just trying to show me what they fear. And instead of listening to that and seeing it and naming it, I end up, it's that dance back and forth and back and forth. And it's the same with the perfectionist and the avoider. The perfectionist's like, no, all you got to do is X, Y, Z, PDQ, right here, here's a list. And the avoider's like, yeah, sure, go ahead and email that to me, right? And they get into this dance of avoiding and trying to be perfect. So once you know what your conflict personality type is, you can prep yourself. If you get a client who comes in the door and you're like, uh-oh, victim 101, here we go. You can just kind of settle yourself and just turn the music off. Don't dance.
Yeah.
That's really interesting how you're literally feeding into each other's, your, how did you say it? Your personalities and perpetuating the issue. I'm definitely a perfectionist, I would say. And so now I'm aware of that. That's really useful. Thank you, Lara.
You're welcome.
What are some common tactics that business bullies use?
This is one of my pet peeves, because being a pleaser, when someone tells me, okay, so can you do this for me? And I draw my boundaries firmly and no, but I can do this. And they go, okay, great. And yet they completely ignore what you said, and they basically go with what they said originally. So overstepping your boundaries and ignoring you and reframing what you have said you're willing to do. Oftentimes bullies will hear what they want to hear and reframe what you've said in their own lexicon so that they can, basically rewrite history. So you really got to, it goes along with those micro boundary breaches. You really got to pay attention to that and say, oh, you have that almost right. No, I'm not going to be available to you Saturday at 8 a.m. I don't work weekends. However, I'll be there Friday at 8 a.m. or, whatever the topic is at hand.
So, Lara, why is it important to train your frontline staff first before your senior staff?
Yeah, so
talk about frontline staff and what that is versus your senior staff.
Yeah, so all you professionals, you're the senior staff.
Okay.
Your frontline staff is going to be the secretary, the person who answers the phone, maybe your peripheral people. So if you have, again, I'll use the example of a realtor. If you've got a stager or some of these, a house cleaner or
inspector.
Exactly. They're your peripherals, but they're your frontline because they're going to be dealing with your clientele.
Yes.
Well, and if they're at a higher emotional state, they have assumptions and expectations automatically. And this person represents you. Well, if they are just going about doing their job and then they get triggered into reacting in a negative way to your client, who's going to have to fix that? Who's going to have to pay for that?
Yeah.
But if you just train them, just what we're talking about right here, right now, about boundaries, about pre-framing a little bit to say, I'm going to be in your house, it's going to take about an hour, it's going to look like this, and create that safety, that's all it takes.
Yeah.
You can save yourself from creating a situation to where you've made a lot of your subs unhappy and your client unhappy with just a little bit of knowledge.
And, in the spirit of one-timing, it's a coaching program that I teach for business professionals on time management, business efficiency at the highest level possible. The great news is because this show might sound a little bit, oh my gosh, there's so much behind the scenes and things that I have to do, but there really isn't. It's just watching for these challenging situations that are not one-off, but instead they're the same ones that are going to continue to happen over and over, and recognizing it and then being willing to figure out, what do I need to do to make this come out right? And then you've landed it, you've got it, and you can move on and just wait for the next one to come up. And eventually you have a whole business model that is one-timed and very efficient and thought up front of what to do, right?
Exactly. You can even have a swipe file of what it looks like to work with me.
Yes.
And you just share that with your frontline staff and they share that with the clients.
Yep. Love
Easy
that.
peasy.
So, Laura, you talk about appreciation language. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What's appreciation language and why is it so important to know?
Going back to your frontline staff, it's really important. People like to be appreciated in a certain way. It's kind of like the love languages, right? I'm a huge acts of service person. Someone buys me flowers, I'm like, great, something I can watch die. Thanks so much. I'm not a gift-giving type. That's not my appreciation language. However, if you swing by and grab me a coffee on the way into work, well, I feel really appreciated and seen. So it's important to know how people like to be appreciated so that you can show genuine appreciation. It really goes a long way to creating strong relationships.
Yeah. So, Laura, we've got about 60 seconds left here, wrap up, and I want to ask you one more question. Two most important phrases you should not be afraid to use.
Thank you, and I don't know.
Love it. On that note, Laura, thank you so much for coming in, and so excited to have you here representing my Power Lunch and Learns with my real estate agents, and definitely having you come back again.
Absolutely. It's so much fun.
And coming up next on the Money Hour, we have Holly Fern of Lynn Mac Commercial right here on 1150 AM KKNW after this short break.